What do we mean by equity? Who experiences equity? When we even say equity, who are we talking to? Embracing equity. Who are we talking to? Are we talking to the employers? Are we talking to the management? Are we talking to the HR personnel who actually do the recruitment, the hiring and the firing? Are we talking to our colleagues? Are we even talking to, you and I? Remember, the thing we keep saying is no one left behind. No one left behind. I want you to think, how can we ensure that no one is left behind? Equity in itself is an interesting concept, but I can tell you, if I answer that question, which I want you all to answer for us, is that as Black Irish women in the labor market, do we experience equity? If we cannot achieve the minimum, which is equality of experience means that everyone who comes into that system, who meets you, who meets your organization, who comes to work with you or uses your products, that we can have the same equality of experience. How can we ensure we have that? How can we ensure that we have equality of experience in the labor market? We're going to talk to, women who are doing amazing well, who've been successful in their fields, they've been able to rise, they've been able to navigate the labor market. We're going to talk to them to see, are they experiencing equity? What would they think can be done, to improve on their experiences in the labor market?
I am a PhD holder. I know when I started looking for a job after I graduated from my PhD. Whilst I was doing my PhD, I was teaching across the university where I was doing my PhD. And then when I graduated, it was difficult getting a job in that field. Now I had to pick a job that was beneath my certificate, beneath my degree. And whilst I was there doing the job, I was also applying for a position which I knew I was qualified for the position. I was already acting on that position. I didn't get the position. I applied 2 times, I didn't get a position. But someone that had just finished leaving cert, which was really bad, he just finished leaving cert and he got that position which I was applying for.
I can only speak for the health sphere, as it were. And I think definitely there is no equity there. I can tell you when I walk around the hospital where I work, there's very few doctors who look like me. From a nursing perspective, it's much better. They are definitely more, not only just Black nurses, but Indians and Filipinos. So there's a lot more equity on the nursing side than there is on the medical side of things, for sure. And I suppose if you look at the male-female ratios in health care, there's a definite disparity when it comes to consultant or higher level positions in health, where we seem to see a lot more males than females.
The reality is that we don't experience equity in the labor market. I mean, if you look around, we're almost invincible. It's almost as if we are not there. However, the reality is that a lot of us are there. We are here in Ireland, a lot of Black Irish women, educated, highly skilled Black Irish women, but you don't see that in the labor market.
Will you say that's equity? Tomorrow, the person will go on to have a BSc and he will apply for a job and will get a better position because they'll say work experience. He has gotten work experience way before he even went in to get his BSc. I, on the other hand, didn't get the opportunity to get that position, and it's not going to count in my job experience, in my work experience. So will you call that equity? I have not been given the same platform as this other person. This other person, even though I have a higher degree, he has better years of experience than I do in a career, in a field which I know I would excel. So equity doesn't play for the Black Irish woman. For me, it hasn't worked for me.
Some of the people within academia, some Black women, some Black academics, have had their qualifications challenged. while teaching. I know one person in particular had a student challenge kind of the legitimacy of her teaching them as an academic and wanted to know what her qualifications were. I know people are intimidated, black women in particular who work in healthcare settings are often intimidated within those settings. So it impacts on their ability to do their job, it impacts on their self-esteem, and I think this is a huge part of what equity within the workplace is.
Says that we are very far from achieving equity for black women in Ireland. And you would find that majority of, for example, migrant women, in particular black women, are highly educated compared to native women. But their opportunity to access labor market, for example, especially on jobs that matches their qualification, is very, very far from being achieved. We have, a lot of women who participate in training, they go to college and better themselves. But when you look at the equality of outcome, it's not there.
Your experiences are not recognized. So there's no way that the system makes provision for equity. It doesn't exist. And it's not just in labor, it's everywhere. You are the other, you're not the mainstream that the general laws are made for.
I don't see as a black woman having any equity at all. We are very, very far from it. It actually makes a lot of hard for a black woman because there is so much stigma, there is so much being undermined. Also, I think there is a lot of mistrust when you are a black person that you can actually deliver, although you are delivering every day.
Well, equity about all women is recognizing each and every one as they present ourselves to us. Is seeing the human as the human is, not as the human we want them to be, but also acknowledging and embracing what each individual presents and brings to it. Because what I am good at is sociology. I'm good at lecturing it. I'm good at writing about it. But I would be dreadful running a shop, being in a business, being this, that, and the other, because these are the things I just naturally cannot do. It means my skill sets, my way of thinking, my way of being, allows me to move into spaces that are comfortable for me. However, those spaces in and of themselves do not present themselves to all women. People who were different, like people with intellectual disabilities, they were removed from society and put into institutions. Women who were pregnant outside of marriage were removed from society, put into institutions. If you had a child outside marriage, somehow you were a fallen woman, whatever that means. But it also means it let the men off the hook. So an awful lot of continuing the values of society falls on women.
Part of the interview would be Oscailga in Irish, and so I had prepared for that. I entered into the interview and there was about 4 people on the panel, and before we even started, they just said, well, part of this interview was supposed to be Oscailga in Irish, but obviously, you don't know Irish, you won't speak the language, so we'll just omit that section of the interview. It just was real proof of that unconscious bias, because as soon as I walked into the room, so my name is Emer O'Neill, it's a very solid Irish name, but that's not what they were expecting to see. And I could nearly see it in their face. Again, this is one of those things because it's so hard to be able to prove these things and to explain them to other people that don't experience that discrimination. But I could see on their face, they didn't expect to see a brown woman come in and sit down in front of them. It was a traumatic experience for me because it took part of my Irish heritage away from me. It reminded me that I am different, and it reminded me of the hurdles that we as Black Irish women face in every aspect of our lives.
I remember my very, first days. I've been in Ireland for 20 years. I was kind of volunteering in a day service in a crash, and at that time I had a qualification as a Montessori teacher. So an opportunity came up, but then I went on to not get the job, and an Irish person who was coming from the food industry actually got the job as a Montessori teacher, whereas I was one that had the qualification as a Montessori teacher. We have what it takes to bring to the table, but the key word for me is that opportunity. And I suppose as well, maybe the way positions are advertised it is not inclusive, you know, and people wonder, are you sure I can apply for that? Lack of representation. I don't see somebody that looks like me in that capacity. Am I encouraged to apply for it? You know, am I encouraged, would they take me?
Some of the research that has been shown before indicated that, you know, they have many children, they are not able to participate or to do anything, you know, that is being done in the society. But I don't think that's the reason, because working in an organization that is purely for migrant women, the National Network of Migrant Women in Ireland, where majority of our women who are 90% are African women, it's very evident that majority of them don't even get to know when there are opportunities, although they don't get even to be invited, you know, to participate in any form of activities going on at community level or what is happening in their community. And when they apply for these jobs, let's take an example, majority of them have been to education and they have masters or they have PhD, but when they apply for jobs that matches their areas of specialization, some of them don't even get to be called for interviews, or they don't even hear from those people of where they applied for jobs. So there are a lot of challenges. So discrimination is key major, and I want to say that very clearly.
I think childcare is something that women could definitely get more help with. I remember there was a time when my children were very young and going to the creches that the childcare bill alone was probably more than the mortgage I was paying. So that discourages a lot of women from going into especially healthcare. You know, as a mother, then you have to kind of balance the time that you're at work with the time that you're not with your children, and dealing with that guilt as well of not seeing your children as often as other mothers do. We don't have the village that maybe the native Irish people have.
And why do people get away with it? Because there's not enough support. There's not enough, the onus is on you to prove that happened to you. The onus is on you to prove, you know, discrimination. A lot of people are worried, they're afraid, you know, oh, if I take up a case like this, is that not going to put me on a list that, you know, makes it more difficult for me, you know, to find a job in a place where almost everybody knows everybody, particularly in certain sectors. I could tell you experiences that would bore you, but we know that the experiences of women everywhere, you know, is the same, you know, from, I mean, women are, when we look at the gender pay gap, 14th of November, you know, technically we say women start working free, but actually we should say white women start working free, because research just showed that, you know, there's a double penalty that we pay as migrants. So our own gender pay gap is about 26%, so much higher than what women pay.
We know from research that a lot of black women have their CVs overlooked, particularly when it comes to jobs that require high cognitive thinking. Even though their qualifications are equal to their white counterparts, they often don't even get past the HR system or get access to the labour market even at that level. Then we know once they've accessed the labour market that there's a lot of racialisation of their culture. So hair, food, language, names are often interrogated once they're in the labour market. People touching their hair, people complaining about their food. So therefore their identities then within the Irish labour market are contested, and their right to be there again, their legitimacy within the labour market is contested. And this also plays a role in terms of self-esteem, this undervaluing of black women within the labour market. And I think it really requires systemic level reform and change to support women. We also know that black women are less likely to build up social networks in order to build up the social capital that's required to progress within a lot of roles and within a lot of institutions. So this again stops them, and it slows down their trajectory, or they don't even have a trajectory in terms of getting leadership positions.
I think first and foremost is recognise they're Irish. Being Irish does not equal being white. And we have a whole history of Irish who are not white.
At the core of it is that discrimination. You know, it's one of it. And there is also that lack of understanding of who these people are, that cultural and that kind of not understanding what these black women represent, what they are bringing into the society, you know. So a lot of that, but at the core of it is that discrimination and lack of understanding.
That how have we come to learn those stereotypes? We've come to learn them from our own, we didn't see it, I suppose, when we went out and people did out to, as they saw it, to spread Christianity. And of course, they also spread Western values, Western culture. They didn't respect the culture of local people, their values, their way of life. And they became part of the colonial class. And they, brought the mentality back we had as, the black babies boxes when I was young. We had no understanding of that because the white supremacism, which is part of Eurocentrism, which we were part of, even though we weren't a big colonial power, we learned that culture. We learned about the superiority of Europe and the assumption that the Enlightenment view, that what Europe had to offer was going to save humanity. Nobody mentioned all the wars, nobody mentioned the killing, the brutality that went with that colonization, cultural and economic and political and military, but it was the assumption was that the West was superior and that Europe was superior and it knew best and everybody else should learn from them. So I think there's a huge unlearning to occur and a new history that needs to be learned in this country and in other countries like here, if people are, we talk about to decolonize the curriculum, to decolonize how we represent people who are different from ourselves.
We say that in Ireland, women are not a homogeneous group. African women or black women are the group that has been left behind in so many areas. So we need to come up with affirmative actions, but also we need to work with organizations and groups and role models of African women or black women in Ireland to be able to show that, the future generations, which is the second and third generations of black women, have a chance in life. Because in Ireland at the moment as we speak, it's very, very difficult to see these black women in different levels of decision making, to see them even in politics, to see them in jobs. When you walk in different departments, when you walk in places where you think that there's diversity, you don't find them there. So we really need to come up with strategies of putting them into these positions or to promoting their equity. But this can only be done if the state takes the action itself, and affirmative action would be one of them, because there's that inequality that cannot be achieved. And if we are talking about equity now, and we have not even approached the equality towards black women, it's just a shame.
The capacity, the things we can do, it's not recognized. So that needs to be, it needs to be recognized. Why is it not recognized, I would say? Because we're not sitting on those tables. How we can have inclusion, how black people, black women can sit at the tables, how we can bring our experiences to bear when decisions are being made, how we can be part of the conversations. Because if we're not there, we're not there. There's no one who has lived our lives to be able to reflect those experiences.
We as black women, we come with a lot of value. Aside from the fact that we have a lot of very and highly educated, skilled black women, we bring a lot to the table. But when we are not given the opportunity to sit at the table, it is problematic. We are not saying leave the space, because sometimes it's that lack of understanding, as if people are coming in to take that space. No, people are not saying leave your space. People are saying we bring a lot. What we are trying to say, we bring a lot, we bring value into the society, we bring value into our new community. We want to be part of our new community, and we cannot be part of our new community if we are still left outside in the cold.
I think we would need a national action plan as to how to include not just people from outside of Ireland. I feel that I'm talking about the black people who are living in Ireland, who are well qualified and who have been here for a long time.
So we are not only women, which is an obvious disadvantage in society, we are also women of colour, which nearly puts us at the bottom of the totem pole. And what I find is somebody who is passionate about gender equality is not as passionate about gender equality in ethnic minority groups.
If we really want to do this thing called embracing equity, we're saying we want to look at the intersectionalities of our life. When we lump up gender together, we say, 50% of women are now in the labor market. But out of that 50%, maybe only 2% of black women are in the labor market. how we can make sure that each of these intersections are not being left behind.
I think one of the first things they have to do is actually rigorously implement the equality legislation that already exists, because we have all the policies, we have everything, what we don't have are the practices. This is an area where I think the employer has to really, pitch in and do their part and create a safe space for Black women. I think inclusion, diversity are all elements of social justice that have to be really genuinely implemented in the workplace.
Incentives for companies to really, work on diversity instead of having said policies and strategy plans, to actually put it into motion. Because me as a person, when I look at different industries here in Ireland, I still see the same thing. I see a lot of white faces. And I see a lot of white faces even in specific areas that are there to represent me. I don't see people like me on these boards of management or on these committees that are supposed to be there to represent me. I was born and raised here in Ireland. I grew up here. Never in my life have I ever had a person of colour teach me in the classroom. I've never seen a Black person as a principal or in a form of leadership position. It took for me to go to America to see people that looked like me in positions of leadership.
Before I pass on to another life, I would hope I would see a lot more Black scholars in Irish university.
A lot of Black women do this voluntary job, want to get into big roles, and then we go into activism because we want to be heard.
We are change makers. We are people that done things with money, with acknowledging, without acknowledging what you're doing. We are people that we change communities every day. We raise our kids, we clean homes, we wash. Men go to work. Sometimes they don't even have money because salary is paid once in a month. But we need to feed our kids. We go out our way and try to find our children's food. So we were people that we were made in such way. And because of that energy, it's an energy whereby it actually scares.
You'd find that also there are so many groups and organizations that are led by Black women as well in this country. They just come up with solutions and mechanism of how to solve some of the problems. If they don't do that, we would be talking of a different story of where, we'll be talking of an island of where, people, in particular, Black women and their family are lost.
Spending a lot of emotional labor, doing a lot of the extra work, a lot of the volunteering, a lot of the activisms, and you can see all of that work in trying to make the change in our society.
I find that Black Irish women are held to a different standard than the rest of Ireland. There is a very small gap for us to fail or to make mistakes. And I have felt even since I was a child that in order to even be recognised as my peer, the same as my peer or my fellow counterpart, I had to excel just to be good enough to be on par.
The Black young girls coming behind us, when they get to these spaces, we are still talking about diversity and inclusion. That would be very sad. I do enjoy my role. I do enjoy being a role model to young Black ethnic minority girls and girls in general. It's something I really love, but it's not been an easy path. Going from direct provision to becoming a doctor, an expert in my field, it hasn't been an easy journey. It wasn't given to me on a platter of gold. The reality is that sometimes we have to work extra harder than our counterparts.
It's not even just for us, but for our children as well, and then where we have to be talking about explaining to them that just because, yes, you're Irish, you were born here, but then some people are not they're going to question your Irishness, My son would have faced, racism, and he got attacked and where he was punched by someone in his school, and was telling him to go back to where he came from. Now, my son has never been back home. This is the only land that he knows. So those activism, those conversations, those trainings and all that, they're very important, to keep us going, to, navigate the labor market and to ensure that our children don't face, what we have faced.
Want to identify with Ireland quite a lot, but quite often I'm reminded I'm not Irish. And when I see that and the contribution that I myself am making into this country, it makes me very sad. I call myself a B4. Beautiful, intelligent woman from Offaly.
That is a simple truth. We want them to see us. We want people to see us for who we are. We are amazing. We are beautiful inside out. And above all, we are very hardworking.
It is a solidarity. It is a working together. It is in that space that we find ourselves. And that when we allow every group to be, then as a society, as a community, we can all be. There is a place for you. There is a place for me. That we make that space where we can all serve each other effectively.